planty people. I am here today to talk about moss poles and how to wet them and how to fill them back up. I get asked all the time how to do it without the water running all over the place, and I've developed a pretty handy little method that seems to be working, so I'm going to talk about it today. So this is going to be filmed over a day, and I'm going to cut it all together, try and kind of give rough hour increments on the screen as to how long it's taken me. And this isn't a process you can do in one go. It's something you need to do kind of, on your day off, or you start it in the morning and you finish it in the evening. You can do it over a couple of days, but it's not something that can be done in one go if your moss pole has dried out. Now, when I say moss pole, I am talking about sphagnum moss poles, not cocoa moss poles, which I also have here, which I'm actually about to replace with a sphagnum moss pole because I don't like the cocoa poles. So I'm going to get the phone out of the tripod, you can stop looking at my face, and you can start looking at my plants. So moss poles are really awesome to help your plants, especially tropicals, in helping them get more humidity, help giving them something to stabilize onto, and helping them grow taller. So I like to make externally mounted moss poles, which means that the pole for the mount is on the outside instead of on the inside, and I use a chicken wire that is stuffed with moss. Now when I make mine, I actually make them where I pull a section out of the top and I leave like a little well. So in here you've got about half a finger's depth hole in the top that is like a little well. Now I have left this pole to get so dry and crunchy just so that I could film this video, so I can show how to get it from extreme dry. When you really should be trying not to let them dry out to the point of crunchy the whole way down, but occasionally it happens, life gets in the way, you get busy, it's really dry where you live like me, and it happens. So the difference between a sphagnum moss pole and this, which is what you buy commercially at most hardware stores now, is this is like a cocoa thing, cocoa core or whatever it's called. And what it's got this sticky residue on it from like this glue that they use for it, and it doesn't actually hold any moisture. It's just something for them to grow up, and it's not actually as easy for aerial roots, which are these, to grow into the moss. You can see here, because it started to detect something strong and stable to grow onto, it started growing a really strong aerial root out the side there. But these ones, they can't actually grow into the moss and penetrate the moss. Whereas on these moss poles, these aerial roots will actually grow through the wire into the moss and actually anchor inside the moss. And what this does, not only does it provide a lot more water and humidity to your tropical plants, it also tricks them a little bit into believing that they're growing up a big strong tree. And what this does is it makes your leaves on your philodendrons, your monsteras, your tropical climbers, it makes the leaves bigger. And with these monsteras, you'll get more penetrations, which are these holes in here. So you'll get bigger leaves because the plant believes it's growing up a really stable, strong structure. So these moss poles can really help with that. Not only that, but they help with humidity. I've had 2 new leaves come out on these plants in the last month and a bit from using these moss poles. So I find the sphagnum moss poles are really, really helpful for my tropical plants over these commercially bought cocoa poles, which have a wooden stake in the middle. So the wooden stake in the middle can go, bad. It can cause problems. So I'm actually going to be making a new moss pole for this little Addisoni, is that how you say it, monstera? And hopefully it will get as happy and healthy as my other monsteras have been. So let's get into watering these things. Okay, so as I talked about, this is a process that's going to have to happen over the entire day because I have let these poles get really, really crunchy. If your plant isn't mounted, like hasn't grown through the pole yet, you can take the pole out and water it separately. I'm too lazy for that. So I'm doing it this way. So what I have here is you have your trusty spray bottle, and then I have a slow pour watering can. A slow pour watering can has a very small little spout. So this spout, my fingertip, is bigger than the spout on the end of this watering can. It has a very long, thin tip. I got this on eBay. I also saw some at Kmart that had similar, so they're around. But you want something that's long and thin. If you haven't got that, find like just something in your kitchen or something that you can pour slowly from. So you want something that's only going to release a little bit of water at a time. But we're not using the watering can right away. So first you go in with your trusty spray bottle, and then you want to mist the crap out of the top half. So when I water my moss poles, I actually want to only wet them to about here, completely saturated, about halfway. Because the reason for that is when you've completely saturated to about here, which is what will be done by the end of this video, then it'll actually work its way down the pole. And then when you feel the bottom of the pole is moist and the top of the pole is dry, you will fill up the well again. That's what the best way to do it. But this is how to get it from completely crunchy back to where it should be. So I get really close with my spray bottle. And you want to spray the whole outside layer of the moss. And that's for now. And then you leave that for a little while. Actually, I'm going to try this because I have a pretty deep well in the top here. So, you can get most of my finger at the top. I'm going to fill the well once. And that's it. So I filled that well to the top. You want to make sure that your pole is vertical 100%. Otherwise that water's just going to pour out the side. And then I'm going to come back later. Okay, so I have been going in about every hour and spraying and topping up the well on the top of the pole. You don't have to do it every hour. I've just been at home today, so I've been wandering around and doing that. You can do it every couple of hours, every half an hour, once in the morning when you leave for work, and once in the afternoon. It's up to you, whatever's easiest. But now what it looks like is, if you have a look, you can see the top half of the pole is really wet. And if you feel it, it's really wet the whole way through and it's squidgy. And then the bottom is still quite dry. So I'm going to top it up one last time and make it really soggy. So when the moss starts to absorb more, you can pour more on the top because it's not going to drip off the dry moss. When it's still dry and crunchy, that's when it's going to drip off all over. So you can see it's saturating the moss there. So what we have now is half of the pole to about here. You can actually see the color difference. So the bottom, this top half of the pole is wet to about here, and then this bottom half of the pole is still dry. And over time, over the next week or so, all this moisture is going to run down. The heavy water that's still in the top here is going to run down, and it's going to wet the base of the pole. The top of the pole dry back out. If I'm clever, I will catch it before the top of the pole dries back out, and I'll just top up the well again. And it's much easier to do if you don't let it dry entirely out. But if you've let your pole dry entirely out, that's the best way to refill it. You got to be slow, you got to be gentle, but then once it's done, that'll last It'll last about 2 weeks in winter and maybe 3 weeks in winter, and a little bit less in summer, obviously, because it's going to dry out more. Anyway, that's how I fill up my moss pole. I keep getting asked about it, so sorry this came out a bit long, but I hope it was helpful. Anyway, thank you. Enjoy. Bye.